Sorry, I cannot see the screen.
I will share it very soon. Just hold on. Welcome all to our weekly interfaith meeting. This is meeting number 208. And the purpose of the meeting is to bring understanding among different religions and thereby try to remove the religious prejudice, which is one of the serious obstacles for attaining peace in the world, unity in the world. And as I requested earlier, I like everyone to mute their microphone. And if you can show your video, that will be wonderful. And these are the protocols that we use. We are here to learn from each other. We are not trying to establish one is right or wrong. And as I mentioned earlier, we are trying to bring common understanding. Everyone has their own opinion on any topics. But if you are doing something good for the welfare of the society, then trying to discover the precious point of unity among contrasting perspectives is an important thing. This will be the order of the proceeding. After my welcome, Colin Dibdin will honor the indigenous people and the land. After that, there will be a music, and then the readings as allocated, and then there will be a closing music. And after that, introduction of the speaker, that is Colin Dibdin. And then there will be questions, answers, and discussions. So I welcome Colin.
Thank you, Siva. And I'd like to acknowledge the first carers of the land on which Jung and myself and Gabby and others now live, the Gadigal and Bidjigal people in Sydney, and to acknowledge that their spiritual tradition is part of the world's spiritual tradition and therefore part of our heritage. And unfortunately, when Europe settled in Australia, we didn't really recognise that the Indigenous people had this wonderful spiritual tradition, which showed itself in the civilization that they had, the way they raised their children, the way they cared for their land. So I appreciate that and like to acknowledge it. Thank you.
Okay, Colin.
the sweetest water in the world, the sweetest water in the world, the sweetest water in the world. Why don't we drink it? I see a man dying, crawling through the desert, struggling to survive. He was praying to God to deliver him from his thirst and begging not to die. The sweetest water in the world,
Sweetest water in the world,
the sweetest water in the world,
sweetest water in the world,
the sweetest water in the world. Why don't we drink it? I see the world crying, drowning in a sea of dust, needing love to quench its thirst, searching for answers, searching to understand. Yet things are getting worse. We're looking for the sweetest water in the world,
sweetest water in the world,
the sweetest water in the world,
sweetest water in the world,
the sweetest water in the world. Why don't we drink it? I see the blessed beauty standing with outstretched arms, a look of love in his eyes, and flowing from his hands like crystal mountain springs, the pure water of life. He's got the sweetest water in the world,
sweetest water in the world,
the sweetest water in the world,
sweetest water in the world,
the sweetest water in the world. Why don't we drink it? Why don't we drink it? The sweetest water in the world,
sweetest water in the world,
the sweetest water in the world,
sweetest water in the world,
sweetest water in the world. Why don't we drink it? The sweetest water in the world,
sweetest water.
sweetest water in the world.
Farida.
Whenever there is a decline in righteousness, O Bharat, and the rise of religion, it is then that I send forth my spirit for the salvation of the good, the destruction of the wicked, and for firmly establishing true religion. I manifest myself from age to age. In the scripture, Bhagavad Gita 4:7-8.
The Lord came from Sinai and dawns from Seir upon us. He shone forth from Mount Paran. He came from the 10,000s of holy ones, with flaming fire at his right hand. Jewish scripture, Deuteronomy 33:2.
Lord, let wisdom come in the company of truth across the earth. Yes, if ye shall be pleased with your prophet, reveal thyself with visible help, mighty through thy hand, through which he might set us in happiness.
At this period, brethren, there will arise in the world an exalted one, named Maitreyi Arahant, fully awakened, abounding in wisdom and goodness, happy with knowledge of the words, unsurpassed as a guide to mortals, willing to be led, a teacher for gods and men, an exalted one, a Buddha, even as I am now, the truth, lovely in its origin, lovely in its progress, lovely in its consummation, will he proclaim both to the spirit and to the letter. The higher life will he make known in all its fullness and in all its purity, even as I do now. Buddhist scripture, Digha Nikaya.
My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me, and give them eternal life, and they shall never perish, and no one shall snatch them out of my hand. My Father, who has given them to me, is greater than all, and no one is able to snatch them out of the Father's hand, and the Father are one. Is there below? I can't see, sorry.
Right. So Christian scripture, John 10, 27, 30.
I need to see, I'm supposed to read 6.
Yes, sorry.
Can you show it, please?
Yes. Sorry about it. I forgot.
Okay. I want to read from the screen, please.
Okay.
Okay.
Margaret.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Okay.
Yes, please.
Truly, yes, truly, the men who raise themselves to God and the women who resign, the men who resign themselves unto God and the women who resign themselves and the believing men and the believing women and the divorced men and the divorced women and men and them and the patience of truth and the women of truth and the patient men and the patient women and the humble men and the humble women and the men who give alms and the women who give alms and the men who fast and the women who fast and the chessmen and the chess women and the men and the women who oft remember God. For them had God prepared forgiveness, and a rich recompense. This is Islam scripture, Quran 33, verse 35. Thank you.
They whom God had endued with insight will readily recognize that the precept laid down by God constitute the highest means for the maintenance of order in the world and the security of its peoples. Baha'i Scripture, gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'llah.
In a bombed out room in Belfast, a young boy is crying. He's alone and he don't understand how the teachings of one book built on love and understanding could cause the hurt and killing in his land. In an old part of Jerusalem, two children are playing. They run and laugh the way that it should be. But one will wear the star and one will wear the crescent. They'll grow up and change from friends to enemies, but we are one. The flowers of one garden we're one. The leaves of one tree. Let the walls come down and stand here together. We are one family. In a Pakistani village, a young boy on crutches takes a fall and lies helplessly there. And he holds out his hand, but no one will take it. They won't touch him or the clothes that he wears. On a side street in Selma, a black child is sitting in a squad car, protected from the whites. 'Cause they're burning a cross to send her a message. And you can see the fear in her eyes. We are one. The flowers of one garden, we're one. The leaves of one tree. Let the walls come down. Stand here together. We are one family. Thunder in our hearts, how we
You have perhaps unknowingly have pinned me. That's why my name is coming frequently on the screen.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all who are reading the holy writings. I hope you enjoyed, and the music as well. Now we are moving to the next part of the program. We usually have a speaker. Today it is Mr. Colin Dibdin. Colin is a Baha'i. His passions are interfaith dialogue and flying. He has worked in air traffic services for 22 years and Baha'i administration for 24 years. And he has a website or blog where he has a lot of information about many religions, including the Baha'i faith. And I saw recently he has a YouTube channel as well. So you can check out the YouTube channel for what he is trying to promote. So now I welcome Colin. I will stop sharing and you can share and debate.
Thank you, Siva. The website is really just for me to collect things so I don't forget them, and also so I can just put it there and then I can shred the paper. So I'm trying to declutter, but also it's good for conversations because it just helps me find things which I've found helpful. Okay, let's try sharing. Right, so topic is investigating religion, some effects of religious prejudice on the quality of scholarship. There's 20 slides altogether. The first section is just looking at what those terms mean, prejudice and scholarship. So Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, says, warn the beloved of the one true God not to view with too critical an eye the sayings and writings of men. Let them rather approach such sayings and writings in a spirit of open-mindedness and loving sympathy. So that's hopefully, if I remember that, then I'll present these 5 writers who I wasn't 100% happy with compassionate eye, because they're all reputable in their own way, but they make particular criticisms of certain religions, and I think they haven't been quite accurate or fair, and I think maybe religious prejudice was affecting the quality of their scholarship. So a scholar, a person who attends a school or studies under a teacher or has done advanced study in a special field, or even a learned person. So each of us can be a scholar if we apply ourselves. I mean, to be an academic scholar, you have to be admitted into a university, but to be a scholar, any one of us can be doing what academic scholars do. In other words, we try to think clearly, present clearly, ask the right questions, and also criticize ourselves and our own works and be somewhat detached and learn from others. So, and also knowing our own limitations. Research and search. So I like this quote. There's a book, The Craft of Research. Research and its reporting are social acts that require you to think steadily about the responsibility you have, not just towards your subject and yourself, but towards your readers as well. especially when you believe that you have something to say that is important enough to cause readers to change their lives by changing what and how they think. And the kind of books we'll be looking at, the reader intends to change how we think about the subject. And of course, all of us, as I said, we do ask questions and do research on a daily basis. We might just be choosing what to buy, what product to go, what to buy, or where to go on the next holiday. Or it might be something more important, like whether a particular religion is good or bad for humanity. And on this journey, this is the ultimate search. On this journey, the wayfarer dwelleth in every abode, however humble, and resideth in every land. In every face he seeketh the beauty of the friend, that haply in some heart he may discern the secret of the beloved, or in some face behold the beauty of the adored one. That's Baha'u'llah talking about the quality of being a seeker. So what is prejudice? That is a picture of, I think it's supposed to be a used car salesman saying, buy this car. And if I was buying a car, I would just say, yes, it's shiny and it's red. And the salesman is smiling. I think I'll buy it. But in reality, when you're buying a car, you put a little bit more research into it. So prejudice, an unfair and unreasonable opinion or feeling, especially when formed without enough thought or knowledge. So I could be prejudiced about the car. Instead of asking if it's reliable and roadworthy, I'm just saying, oh, it looks great. So when you prejudge, prejudice is prejudging, judging before you've done any or enough search. And prejudging a religion is called religious prejudice. Now, the difference with scholars is that who are published is that they go through, normally go through an academic review. So their work has to meet a certain standard. Whereas for you and me, we can more or less say what we like and believe what we like. And we might not ever get challenged. Now, research by others determines most of what we believe. That's what I found in this book, The Craft of Research. Without reliable published research, we would be prisoners of what we alone see and hear, locked in the opinions of the moment. No doubt most of our everyday opinions are sound. After all, we derive many of them from our own research and experience. But mistaken ideas, even ugly and dangerous ones, flourish because too many people accept what they hear or want to believe on no very good evidence. Only when we know that we can trust the research of others can we free ourselves from those who, by controlling our beliefs, control our lives. So, for example, I haven't been to London. But I've talked to people who claim that London exists, and I believe that London is a real place. I did not see the Ice Age or the evolution of species or an oxygen molecule or Jesus speaking the Sermon on the Mount, but I believe in these things because of the published research of others. And that's reasonable to believe, to have I mean, I might be wrong about all those things. So belief is always a little bit qualified, but when it's 99.999, I'm sitting on a chair. I believe it's not going to collapse in the next hour and a half. Otherwise, I'll disappear off the screen downwards. So we tend to trust, if we trust the fact that it's published and academic, we know it's been through peer review, we put some trust in it. Sometimes we trust because it's on television or in a newspaper. Unfortunately, we also trust what we find in social media, even though there's no review at all done there. So when do you question what you're reading? If you are seeking knowledge, you should not outsource your search to another researcher. Why would you want to? So we heard the song about the sweetest water. In other words, the purest water in the world. Why don't we drink it? So if I'm thirsty, I really want a glass of pure water. I don't want to just give it to someone else to have the experience, because then I don't get the water. And when it's as important as religion and believing in God and recognizing his beauty, Baha'u'llah wrote that every man has been and will continue to be able of himself to appreciate the beauty of God. So we don't need to totally give that aspect of our lives to someone else, be it a family member or a minister or a priest or someone who's written a book. And Abdu'l-Baha said that it's the duty of everyone to investigate reality, and investigation of reality by another will not do for us. So, and that's the same. If we hear that there's a great restaurant, we try it ourselves. A beautiful painting, we want to see it or a picture of it. A good movie, you don't just send someone else to to watch the movie. You try and see it yourself. All right, and still talking about what the problem is. If we want to see with our own eyes, we should get our eyes checked first. I'm talking about spiritual eyes. So if we have do we have narrow vision, or do we see with the eye of oneness, the oneness of humanity? Do we have pride or fear, something new that makes us blind to spiritual reality? So Bahir Naqshbandi, in her book Asking Questions, A Challenge to Fundamentalists, that dogmatic attitude on the part of the adherent of any ideology, whether religious or political, that makes for a rigidity of attitude, a narrowness of vision, and an unrelieved tolerance towards differing points of view. And then there's pride and fear, and I think that may have been what's happened to the people who sentenced Jesus to death. Baha'u'llah wrote, moreover, call thou to mind the one who sentenced Jesus to death. He was the most learned of his age in his own country, whilst he who was only a fisherman believed in him. Take good heed and be of them that observe the warning. So you don't have to be a priest or a academic scholar to recognize Jesus. So getting on to some of these books I read, and well, I didn't read all of The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. There's quite a few volumes. However, he's a very respected historian. It's Edward Gibbon. Then there's Maulana Muhammad Ali, The History and Doctrines of the Babi Movement. Bernie Power in Melbourne, Understanding Jesus and Muhammad. There's Michael Fallon, The Christian New Testament and the Islamic Quran, a comparison. And Robert Spencer, The History of Jihad. Now, they all have reputable credentials, some academic, some religious, and some through the popularity of their books. And therefore, a reader who picks up a book and buys it, then they've chosen the book for a reason, maybe because it's going to interest them. They want to learn something about the subject, and they might be inclined to believe what they're reading without inquiring independently. However, as it says here, I think they should not be uncritically believed. Maybe 99%, but the key point of the book, like the foundation on it that it's written on, might be right, and then the rest is not very good. So starting with Edward Gibbon, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, which was published in 1789, he concluded, he provided a short history of Muhammad and concluded that his method was to propagate his religion by the sword and to destroy monuments and pursue the unbelieving nations of the earth. But that was how long ago? More than 200 years ago. And according to a current historian, Bernard Lewis, Gibbon's influence on the Western perception of the Prophet and Islam and their place in history was enormous. I don't know if you've noticed, but this is one of my motivations. There's a very common feeling in Australia at least, but I'm sure everywhere, that Islam is associated with spreading religion by the sword or violence. And I gave a talk a couple of years ago in this forum and found that that wasn't true. That certainly the empire spread by the sword, but later, on the whole, people converted voluntarily when they saw what Islam was about. So here's the Lewis's assessment. Gibbon recognized the late and legendary character of much of the Arabic material made available to him in Latin translations and attempted some critical analysis of its content. However, his own imperfect knowledge and the defective state of European scholarship at the time hampered his work and sometimes blunted the skepticism which he usually brought to the sources and subjects of his historical inquiries. So Gibbon wrote in the 18th century, and he was relying on the secondary sources available to him at that time. Okay, the next writer I'd like to look at is Maulana Muhammad Ali. I found him by accident in our local library, and I'm very happy I did because I've bought 2 of his books since then, and he's one of my most reliable sources for analyzing the Quran and learning about Islam. So I admire him in that respect. And my question is, what causes an intelligent, humble, conscientious scholar like Maulana Muhammad Ali, whose work is extraordinarily helpful in understanding the religion of Islam, why do you drop the ball when writing about another religion? And it turns out that his main or only source was a document called Nuqtat al-Kaf from the early 1850s, which is when the Babi faith began. And without looking into the scholarship of the subsequent 83 years, in 1933, he published this conclusion. Thus, Babism, along with its offshoot Baha'ism, is clearly a repetition not only of the doctrines of Ismailiyah, which is a religion, what did it say here, a sect of Islam, but also of the horrible deeds of murder and the attempt to bring about a revolution. So Maulana Muhammad Ali relied on one early document of historically contested date, source, and editing, and neglected to independently research the topic. In 1933, when he wrote the book, he could have easily acquired Nabil's narrative. And I say easily if he had the intention. His intention was to, in the title, was to look at the history and teachings of the Babi movement. So if he was really sincere or making any sort of effort, he could have acquired Nabil's narrative. And Wikipedia says Nabil's narrative relies mainly on the memoirs of surviving early Babis, and Nabil himself was a participant in many of the scenes he recounts. So I assume that Maulana Muhammad Ali didn't bother because he did not take the other religion seriously. And maybe he had an unconscious religious prejudice which affected the quality of his work in this case. Now, I was very hopeful when I discovered this scholar in Melbourne had written a book, Understanding Jesus and Muhammad, and Bernie Power does have the right qualifications. He's studied the Hadith, and he spent many years in a Muslim country. However, in the book, it has a few problems. He relies on the hadiths more than the Quran. And he says this is because it's the hadiths which Muslims follow. Therefore, so he's sort of not looking at the source, which is the Quran. And then he dismisses the idea that jihad can mean individual struggle, which is one of the meanings, possibly the primary meaning. He presents the battles of Muhammad without the context, which was that he was trying to defend a community. And the view he presents of Muhammad would not be recognizable to Muslims, whereas the view of Jesus that he presents, Christians would accept. So his commitment to a particular Christian perspective, reinforced by his position at the Bible College, which has a strong focus on preparing and equipping Christian leaders for mission, might have led him to holding a preconceived bias against Muhammad, which is evident in the way information is presented in his book. And the challenge for any Christian writer with such an orientation was described by the historian Douglas Martin. And Douglas Martin wrote about a different Christian missionary who wrote a book about another religion. Conceptual weaknesses are difficult to understand in a writer whose professional training is in the field of theology and who holds distinguished credentials in this highly specialized discipline. Questions of prejudice aside, they arise presumably from a failure to take seriously the intellectual foundations of the faith being studied. There is no more risky lapse in the examination of beliefs other than one's own. That's an article called The Missionary as Historian. Fourth example is Michael Fallon, who, as you know, I admire greatly, a wonderful person and a beautiful scholar of Christian texts. And he gave, in my opinion, the best presentation we've had in this Interfaith group. And you can find that where we collect the links. He wrote this book, which is available online, called The Quran and the New Testament. The Christian New Testament and the Islamic Quran, a comparison. And he quotes from a book called The Study Quran, a new translation and commentary. So I bought that book because I was interested. And he uses when he quotes the Quran, he quotes from this Study Quran, which was put together by Kano Dagley and others. And Michael Fallon argues in a section called Texts That Give Divine Authorization for the Use of Force to Propagate Islam. And he argues that in the Quran, waging war is not restricted to defense. In other words, he's saying that Muhammad told his followers to fight to propagate their religion. A problem is that Father Fallon does not engage with current scholarship on this question and neglects a resource at his fingertips, namely the commentary throughout the Study Quran and the essay at the back of the Study Quran by Kano Dagley. And the name of the essay is Conquest and Conversion, War and Peace in the Quran. And so the gist of Kano Dagley's analysis is that Islamic law prohibits aggression and is about the maintenance and protection of life and the rights that people need to live in a just society. And Kano Dagley's analysis is not new. It was more or less uncovered about 150 years ago when people started to look into Islam a bit more deeply. And it was very well argued by Maulana Muhammad Ali, who I mentioned in a couple of books ago. His book, The Religion of Islam, where he concluded that the spread of Islam by force is a thing of which no trace can be found in the Holy Quran. And people who have heard the opposite would they might be interested to actually read the analysis in some of these books, which look at the texts and explain why they believe that's the case. And also, we had an interfaith talk by Professor Harlem Rain, I think it was about a year ago, called Covenants in Islam, What They Mean for Peaceful Coexistence. So I think that's an example of a little bit of a shame that he bought this wonderful, quite a hefty book called The Study Quran, but didn't actually read the commentary which he was analysing. And the fifth example is Robert Spencer, The History of Jihad. And he's very popular on YouTube. And he selects, in my opinion, he's very selective about what he puts and doesn't provide the context. He doesn't engage with scholarship at all. And he admits that himself. So he, well, I wondered, why would he have not taken advantage of the academic environment where things are peer-reviewed and they get academic scrutiny, because most scholars would welcome that. And he answered this question himself in an interview. He was asked, is it possible that if you had been an academic, you would not have been able to write your book and present your positions? And Spencer replied by saying, oh yes, there's no chance whatsoever. I saw that in the 80s when I was getting my master's and I wanted to continue to get a doctorate, but I thought, if I do this, I'm going to be constantly coming against these people who state dogmatically things that I believe are false and assume that they're true and make you assume they're true. So I thought, I'm just going to go out on my own and try to do this in the court of public opinion rather than in the academic world. And so he has become popular for, I think he was banned from going to United Kingdom because of security threats, because of the views he was espousing. In the United States, the FBI used his book for training its officers, and then they had a closer look, and that's no longer part of the curriculum, I understand. So essentially, Spencer is admitting that he does not want to subject his views to expert scrutiny, but he's happy to have them published and consumed by a less critical audience. And Robert Spencer has published a new book, his own translation of the Quran. Right, part 3, addressing religious prejudice. What are we doing? What are we doing about it? So the examples we've just looked at not only tell us something about scholars and writers, but they tell us something about ourselves and our community and our institutions. And we read earlier that research done by others determines most of what we believe. And we have seen that if we are not independent seekers of the truth, then we can fall into prejudice. And that can cause us to not care about the truth or reject it, or worse, react violently to it. So obviously I'm not, well, in case you didn't know, I'm not an academic myself, and I'm not qualified to review these books. But this was the points I made were something which are not hard to pick up if you've studied this area. So the point is, we should ask ourselves questions. We should suspend judgment until we've looked into things a little deeper. And of course, with social media, this applies 1,000 times more, because anyone can go online and publish anything which influences other people's views. So what are we doing? The institutions. Unfortunately, religious institutions are at the moment holding the world back. by not addressing, by lending credibility to religious fanaticism. And the Universal House of Justice wrote to the world's religious leaders, and Baha'is delivered these letters and had discussions. And my daughter Gabby and I, we talked to our local Catholic priest, and we had a lovely discussion. But this paragraph says, the greater part of organized religion stands paralyzed at the threshold of the future, gripped in those very dogmas and claims of privileged access to truth that have been responsible for creating some of the most bitter conflicts dividing the Earth's inhabitants. And the consequences in terms of human well-being have been ruinous. That looks like a picture of the Crusades, which the Pope initiated and described as a holy war. And then, of course, a few years later, Christianity had a second split into Protestant and Catholic, and about a third of Europe was wiped out in those wars. And all the other kinds of prejudice in the world are losing credibility, but religious leaders are not willing to question the idea that their religion is right or better, and are not considering the idea that we all share a spiritual heritage. So that's the bad news, the institutions. Community, this is looking at the Baha'i faith, because I see it as a good example, a positive and hopeful example for community. Of course, the Baha'i faith is not perfect. It's a workshop. It's where we're learning to do things. And the Universal House of Justice in 1986, the International Year of Peace, offered the Baha'i community as an example to be studied in case it gives people a little bit of hope. But as I said, it's not perfect. We're learning as we go, but because we're united, we're learning very quickly. So this magazine, horizons.baha'i.org.au, is available online, and that tells you what's happening around Australia with all the community building activities. The Institute process is a way of developing our capacities to serve the community. And as we're studying the book, we're also practicing those capacities. It's a quick way to learn. And in this book, book 6, it is the local community where we learn to cooperate with one another, to grow together and become united. And that's learning cooperation and unity when you're in the community. You can't just, if there's a bit of bad feeling, it's so easy to just walk away, but we're learning to grow together and to understand each other better. And one way is that we understand each other better is in this song, which children learn in children's classes, and that is to see each human as a shining star. So I think if prejudice comes from fear, we can reduce fear when we create communities where we feel secure. And when we do feel secure, we can allow our personal theories to be challenged. But if we don't feel secure, then we're defending our theories and not really learning. If you want an example of the influence of community, go to YouTube and look up Jane Elliott, Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes class experiment. She was a teacher. The students were united, and then she separated them into blue eyes and brown eyes and saw what happened, and it was quite amazing. Fortunately, she fixed it at the end. Okay, what's happening at the level of the individual? In the Sydney Morning Herald, just a week ago, last weekend, there was an article. Throughout history, humans have repeatedly rejected facts and evidence in favor of belief systems that serve their emotional and/or political needs. So that's a bit of a challenge, because I used to imagine that reason would prevail, but in fact, people are emotional creatures, and reason only comes into it if people feel safe. But the point she was making in her article is that was related to social media and such things as confirmation bias. I don't know if you've heard the term confirmation bias, but it's as if there's two doors to there's a gatekeeper to our brain, and if a fact comes along that fits what we believe, we let it in. If a fact comes in which we don't like, we let it out. And so our belief just gets reinforced because we're not letting anything else in. And it gets very, very frustrating if you're talking to someone like that. The best you can do is learn from them, because they're not going to learn from you. But anyway, there was a thought experiment called by a philosopher. He called it Morton's demon. The philosopher's name was Morton. You can look it up in Wikipedia. And he said that he gave this example. He said it was a demon minding the door. Of course, there's no demon, but just to make you think about it. And then he said, when a philanthropic individual tries to help someone who's stuck in this mental state where they're not letting anything in except where they want to come in, the last paragraph says, after years of weariness, the philanthropic individual dies of fatigue. Well, in other words, there has to be another approach. You have to make people feel safe to examine their views. All right, we're nearly finished here. This is a Baha'i belief. I haven't seen the term education revolution, so I've made it up based on these two quotes. Abdu'l-Baha said, the world of existence stands in utmost need of an educator, and that its education must be achieved through a celestial power. I know a lot of people, humanists, for example, and atheists would say, we've just got to do it ourselves. And we have the reason or whatever to get there, but we're not getting there. It's not happening. The only times it has happened is when God has revealed himself and intervened, not so much intervened, but provided guidance for the time, and that has created unity, solved practical problems, laid the basis for civilization. And when people forget those teachings, then of course, or if the teachings become out of date, then there's another, well, the same educator comes back. And along the same lines, consider, Baha'u'llah states, the revelation of the light of the name of God, the educator. The significance of education in the work of community building is unmistakable, and in the field of social action, the provisions of education remain the signature contribution of Baha'is in most parts of the world. So it's interesting. See, transformation comes through the guidance and the new perception we get from God's revelations. And unfortunately, some parents take the approach, I'll just leave my children to investigate for themselves. I won't teach them how to judge, how to perceive with fairness, how to see with their own eyes, just cast them adrift. And another approach, which possibly isn't sufficient, is to just try and learn all the religions and compare them. It's impossible, because you don't know if you're looking at the original religion. You might be looking at something which is out of date. You've got the addition of all the gatekeepers, the scholars, the priests, etc. It's very difficult. So I prefer a shortcut. The shortcut is to be a seeker. Jesus said, knock, seek and ye shall find. Knock and the door shall be opened, ask and ye shall receive. And Baha'u'llah in the Seven Bellies Similarly, he said, to be a seeker, you need patience, but you also need to be, you need a lot of qualities which are going to help detach yourself from your own ego. Similar to what academics try to do, to detach from their own ego and be objective. Objective in a way which enables you to see and feel beauty, the beauty of God. Well, here we are at the end of the talk. Baha'u'llah said, see with thine own eyes and not through the eyes of others, and know of thine own knowledge and not through the knowledge of thy neighbor. Especially with seeking God. This is a family photo. And of course, if we do look with our own eyes, we will find God, and we will recognize that humanity is one. And religious prejudice will be a thing of the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. At least for me, you are a scholar. You have done a lot of research. I think at least it will motivate some of us here to independently approach, to have an open mind in looking at whatever we are looking at, not necessarily only religion, it can be anything. That way, the humanity can come closer much easier and faster. And now the floor is open for questions or comments. Please raise your hand using the reaction button or with your hand so that I can see. And let your questions and comments be brief so that everyone can understand. First, Ahmed and then Yom.
Thanks, Colin. That was a very nice talk. Beautifully done. My question is that, you reviewed probably or read those books that you mentioned. Do they approach or do they state that they are looking from a view of a Christian or from a Muslim view of an atheist view when they talk about these topics, or just they publish those books based on thoughts that they had? It's very important whether they said that I'm looking from the view of a Christian, this topic, or they're saying that this is what I gained from investigating. So because the two are totally different from one another.
Yeah,
as a Baha'i, for example, I would say that I'm a Baha'i and then describe the topic and present the topic and say that I'm looking at a view of a belief in Baha'i faith in this topic. So do they mention these things? Do they?
Yeah, they're all very transparent and also very well known. Yeah. Like Michael Fallon is a Catholic priest, and he conducts retreats. He did much of his research at the Vatican. Edward Gibbon is a historian. He didn't like Islam, but he also didn't like Christianity because he believes that's why Christianity made the Roman Empire weak, and that's why it fell. Bernie Power definitely is presenting his viewpoint as a Christian. Robert Spencer, I think he was Greek Orthodox or one of those forms of Catholic. But he doesn't emphasize that. He emphasizes, he looks at, he's focused on Islam, and you can admire him because his motivation might be to save the world from religious extremism and violence. He doesn't want that. Perhaps he's doing what he believes is meritorious in the sight of God. I'm not sure, but unfortunately, he's not allowing his work to be scrutinized.
For example, I think that the book that you mentioned, the Revelation, the Baha'i movement by that guy, underneath that book, it says Ahmadiyya, which is a sect of Islam. So perhaps at the time, that was in 17th century, 18th century, where the Baha'i movement might have gone to India, and the Muslims there trying to rebuke, the movement, and then he's published this book. So he probably was writing a rebuttal rather than
A rebuttal.
yeah.
Yeah, that might have been a motivation. I mean, 20th century, 1933. And he was a leader of the Ahmadiyyan movement. And so definitely that's his perspective. There's no problem there.
So I think you're right that definitely we have to look through our eyes, where Baha'u'llah says, and with our own knowledge, because if somebody goes and reads that book, it totally deviates its thoughts from the rightness of the Baha'i movement and what the Baha'i movement was about, because that book totally disagreed with it. So,
yeah. Look,
so it's important.
I think that if someone is sincerely seeking the truth or seeking God or whatever, or seeking beauty,
any concept, yeah,
they'll keep searching. They're not going to be, God will be looking after their search. Although,
so I think. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I think that if one wants to study a topic, it has to go to the kind of the writer of the topic, or the books of that on that topic, rather than going and looking at somebody else's writings on that topic. Like, for example, if somebody wants to investigate Baha'i faith or Baha'i faith, they must go to the writings of the original author, the founder of those faiths, in order to understand it, rather than reading a book called The Movement of Baha'i by that guy in India.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Young?
Thank you. There are three things, Colin. There are three notions that I just want to go through quickly. First one that really caught my attention, that in general, I'm talking in general here, it's much safer than you go to talk about different names that social media was very scared to talk about. So this is not a diplomatic table, not political table. And we are in real life, the leader told us, if somebody give a different views, we're not going to go argue and debate about it. So we just like an ostrich, people should bury their head in the sand, not saying anything, because we are so scared of everything. So why you have to go to seek for God? I thought that God give you many manifestation and revelation. They come to your heart and your body and your mind. And why you got to go and seek for Him? That's one thing. The other thing that you extract from Sydney Morning Herald, truth is we cannot handle the truth, because the truth was very scary. You pay $1 billion just to search for the truth and you get nowhere. And so in general, people say, oh, I can't handle the truth. Oh, no. I don't want to talk about the topic. It's so scary. That's one thing. And like you say, a lot of parents, they said, you investigate the faith, whatever you believe by yourself, cast them adrift. Means let the children go and do it themselves. And they come home and they say, Mom and Dad, I found a new religion. I found salvation. But whether they really found salvation or the good religion, they didn't know. Nobody justified that. But actually they fall into a, unknown area. They can be exploited. They can be like get into a cult, religious cult. And they said, oh, we've been doctrined, we've been groomed, we've been saying one word. Everything we do is for God. But actually they're not being saved. God never say that I save you, I give you salvation. Nothing like that. So the parents say, cast them adrift. Mean let them go to the unknown. No protection. And then the good idea that the examination of belief that the one we should do, rather than we talk about our own. Because if we talk about our own, a lot of people, they might not, oh, she is a scholar, he is a scholar. I don't understand him. They don't have time to go to the library with all the archive books of the 100 Years Religion, of Revolution of 1789, French Revolution, and Roman Empire, book published, like disappear, fall of the Roman Empire. Well, the normal citizen don't have time to go through the archive to learn know about this. So whether our learning is relevant for nowadays, modern commercial business society, or we're just wasting our time.
Yeah, I agree with some of your points. I agree parents shouldn't cast their children adrift. Children need guidance. As for the riskiness of talking about religious topics, yes, I agree. We have to be careful, and I was confident that the 5 people I talked about are not a risk.
But the thing that they don't understand it, because a lot of concepts are very abstract. Even say, love your neighbor. It is in what people said, Jesus said that. But in real life, if your neighbor is not a good neighbor and you love the neighbor, and the neighbor go and love somebody else, like he had polygamy, he got 10 wives. So you love the neighbor. So therefore, each situation we got to analyze each situation. Just like I said, each faith, a lot of things that people don't talk about, they're too scared of it. They don't want to go back to revolution and crusader and division and everything, because we've been building multi-million dollars to build unity. And now we go back to the archive, pull out all the conflicts, warfare, and the kids saying, oh, we've been salvation. We had salvation. God comes to us. We've been baptized again. Nobody recognized that baptism.
Okay, all right, thanks. I better move on because we're trying to finish by 8:30 or shortly after these days. But yeah, I do get your point that the simple message of religion, which is love, gets obscured in so many ways. Even the meaning of the word love needs to. I'm talking about the love your neighbor, probably means more like compassion than other kinds of love. But it's a kind of oppression when people are too scared to search, to even find the beautiful teachings of Jesus because of all these other things associated with religion. But thank you.
Sivalingam and then Wasim.
Yeah. Okay, Colin, I think what you said is very positive, but I just want to point out one fact, that the seeker must be pure in heart and open his heart to the teaching of other concept too. If his heart is not open towards religion or towards the concept the other, if he does not want to investigate, then the purpose is lost. So he has to read and investigate by himself. To do that, he must be, pure in heart, without prejudice, read all the other material and listen to other explanation, and then make a decision. Thank you.
Yeah, you're right, and that's the essence of it, to be pure in heart. And Baha'u'llah describes the qualities of a true seeker in the Kitab-i-Ikan, which means the book of certitude.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nuzin. And others who have not spoken and want to ask questions or comments, please raise your hands. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you so much, Colin. Your presentation is full of information. It's very interesting.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's possible to share it with us, but it's okay. Yeah, because I have seen some writings. I wish to make a research about it. And I have 2 questions and 1 comment. So I start first with the comment and then at the end the questions, yeah?
Sure.
So my comment is that for me, after all my experiences, I have come to the point that we have to be programmed, or we have to program our attitude mental, in search of avoiding, for example, prejudice or searching. Why? Because everything we are doing daily, it's based on our attitude. So if we have to search and we don't program our brain or our mental to the attitude, for example, of respect, of humility, of love, it's not going to be easier that we reach our goal. So first of all, when we have our vision, we want to discover something, we want to know something. So we free first our mind, our brain. We tell our brain, I am here to learn. I want to learn. I want to understand. I am not above anything else. So once our brain or our mental is already programmed in that direction, it's going to be easier now for us to understand and to not have any kind of prejudice in our mind. So I was doing this, for example, at the school all the time. When I come to the class every day, I was telling myself, I came today to learn something new. I want to discover something new. And it was easier for me to understand the lessons. And I'm continuing to doing that because for me, I already programmed my brain that we are here in this life to learn, and we are going to learn until the end of our journey to the planet Earth. And the 2 questions I have, the first one, it's in terms of searching. So do you think that our school system today is encouraging children to search in the good direction? Why I'm asking this question, because we can see that in our society, we are full of prejudice and we don't have unity. Why? Because children are learning already to be passive. So the school system is also, for me, this is my personal point of view, is based on passivity, because once the kids are going to school, the teacher is sitting here, and for the teacher, all the kids are empty and he's there, he's the boss, he's the master, and he must teach the others. My personal point of view is that our school teacher is not teaching really good, is not giving the really good attitude of learning. And secondly, in case you agree on these terms, what is your opinion? What do you think, how we can improve our school system today? Thank you.
All right. I only know a little bit about the Australian school system. And I know that it's, well, if you go to a Catholic school, even in a Catholic school, I talked to the religious coordinator of the school where Gabby went, high school, and he said, no, we don't talk about religion. It's too touchy. We're just too sensitive a topic. We just have the occasional mass or formal religious thing. But at the level of person to person, yes, you can, of course, talk about religion. And I remember Gabby telling me that she had wonderful discussions with God about the children in year 12. In the public school system, where I was teaching religious education classes for an hour a week, the government reluctantly, in some states, recognizes that children need some sort of guidance, and so there's been religious education classes, and then the philosophy department at the University of New South Wales came up with a philosophy program instead about reasoning. I can't remember the exact name of it, and that kind of became a competitor in a way. But what I found from my experience of that was that they would be teaching reason, which is a good thing, and thinking clearly, but they were taking the joy out of it all. There was no music, there was no fun, no creativity that I could see. Anyway, yeah, I think these things are lacking from the school systems that I'm aware of. And I would love to see schools teach children how to seek truth and not be prejudiced. Maybe it depends on the individual teacher. My son's a primary school teacher, and he manages to impart some of that, so that the children have a joyful learning environment, but are also having their mind opened a little bit, even if it's not part of the curriculum. And on your first point, attitude to learning, we have to program. Yeah, attitude. Yeah, it's all about. Yeah, it's all about our attitude, and that's something we can control. We can't control other people. We can work on ourselves.
Thank you, Colin and Rosine. It's a very good question. I'm urged to comment on that education system. Your question was whether the education system teaches students to search in the right way. In the first place, the education system are more like a rote learning. They are not actually making children to even ask questions. This may be more so Western countries. It may be more that students can ask questions. But in the Eastern Asian, Sri Lankan, Indian countries, questions are not encouraged. Now, so first of all, independent thinker should be able to ask questions. So first of all, they should create that environment for the students to ask questions. Whether it is the right direction or not, we don't have to worry much, because independently they have to learn by asking questions from different people and the like. But yes, in Australia, they have this, in some schools, they have this religious education. They allow different religions to come and teach their religion. And as an alternative, they have this ethics class, which does not touch on religion, but on moral values. Thank you. It was a very good question. Now I will go to Pina. And if there's anyone else, please. Sachi, I'd like you to ask question to Tina.
Thank you. Thank you, Collins, for the wonderful talk. This is actually in everything that we do. We need to know, or we need to try to understand what is right, what is wrong, what is correct, what is the straight path to go, where to go, how do we do it, like that. So it is an everyday one's choice in life. And already because God loved us, so he created us. And when he created us, he has given us the capacity to also know him and worship him. So that's why it is in the obligatory prayer, the short one. It says, I bear witness, oh my God, that thou hast created me to know thee and to worship thee. So, and it says that we are helpless, we are powerless, but he is mighty. So from that, prayer itself is teaching us to recognize the greatness of God and that we should humble ourselves and that we are nothing. But with the connection of the love of God, they say, alone you are zero. But with God and with humbleness and with his knowledge and love, you become a hero, from zero to hero. So in finding the truth as well, as we have learned when we are discussing something or in consultation, the humbleness, absolute humility and humbleness is very important, because in the hidden word it says, humble thyself that I may graciously visit thee. And then in another hidden word it says that I came to visit thee, but I found a stranger there, so I left. To me, that stranger is the opposite of humbleness, and that is arrogance or ego. So if we want to understand something, it's not enough to intellectually investigate. It's not enough to research or on worldly or on how you call it, in all this scientifically or verbally and all this research to find out the truth. But they are part. It's not that we totally dismiss all that, but there is a basis for all that. So that's why if we don't have that, then even trying to find the truth is not possible. It's hidden. This is amazing, that there are ways to find out the truth. There are ways that we will be guided if we wanted to. How long has the message from God telling us, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, 1,000 years ago? But did we listen? What's happening now, even right now? There are killings, there are arrogance, there are prejudices. So it's not, even though we are given the capacity, the efforts from each and every one of us is still lacking. We need encouragement. We need each and everyone to arise and to serve, and for us all to do something within oneself, within the family and the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to comment, Colin?
No, I loved what you're saying, and it is more than just academic or intellectual. A person might have a PhD in the molecular composition of water, but if they haven't tasted water, then what's the point?
Yes. Before I go to Ahmed, can I ask Sachi, please, if you have any comments or questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. It was a wonderful presentation, Colin. Anyway, you have done a lot of research and written about the books. But on my part, only one comment. I always go for update and upgrade. And we had to seek where we lost. And if we couldn't find, we had to find the reason why we are not. So it is better what I felt and I found myself, I have found what I need, of course, by trying to update and upgrade through the latest discoveries, which have evidences. Anyway, I enjoyed your speech. I am actually in a birthday party for my in my sisters. Still, I brought this to listen to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sachi.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm with you about. Yeah, I'm on the same page regarding science. Because for Baha'is, we have to test. If our belief is contrary to reason and science, then we probably got to throw out our belief. So we're given reason and the scientific method for a reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Ahmed, and then Sarah.
How we can have the school
Sarah hasn't spoken, so I'll wait until she talks.
Oh, Sarah.
I was just going to ask, Colin, these are two observations, and I was just interested in your reflection. So we've been talking a lot about learning and how, I guess, important it is. But I'm just wondering, I guess my observation is technically sometimes the more you learn, the more susceptible you are to prejudice. And I'm wondering, is it a double-edged sword, and how you can protect yourself against it? Because I think sometimes we learn things and we can't be detached, or we understand them a certain way and think that there's seeming contradictions. And so we hold on to it stronger. So I guess, where is that, and how can we protect ourselves in being able to, I guess, be independent in our perception? That was one observation. The second observation is that, with religious prejudice, I find that even within religions, we're prone to it, whether it's the Baha'i faith or Christianity, and we end up with sects. Or, the Baha'i faith doesn't have sects, but when Baha'u'llah said Abdul Baha was the center of the covenant, people were so held on so tightly to what they already believed that some people just weren't willing to recognize things. So just your comments on those 2 points.
I noticed among young Baha'is, or around 18, 20 years old, that there was some prejudice against Christianity and Islam. Islam I could understand, because they'd just come from a place where they were persecuted, or their parents were persecuted. So Paul Stevenson and I, we facilitated a course on Christianity. It was mainly more about how to listen and learn and have dialogue. But we had to address, and one little experiment, because around the same time I'd read a book by Sai Baba, and I thought to myself, okay, well, from a Baha'i perspective, it might be true, but his claim to be a manifestation of God doesn't fit in with Baha'i belief. So I immediately just had this, noticed in myself a little attitude of suspicion or rejection, something like that. So I thought, okay, that's useful. I'll see if I can, what happens in the class I'm teaching. And so I just set up, I made them, I read from Sai Baba, a passage which is very similar in tone and content to what you would read from Abdu'l Baha. And I didn't say, this is from Abdu'l Baha. I said, this is a great book from Abdu'l Baha. What do you think of this? So I sort of set up that they were thinking they were hearing Abdu'l Baha. And of course, they thought it was wonderful. And then I said, that was by Sai Baba. How do you feel now? And we could recognize in ourselves just this prejudice comes in very easily. Whereas Abdu'l Baha actually said that we should recognize and love the light wherever it is, or love a rose, whichever garden it blooms. So yes, we have to overcome prejudice even within ourselves. The first one about how the more you study, the more you can get lost or paralyzed by doubts and questions and too much to absorb, and have you really studied enough? Reminds me of the story of a learned grammarian who came to the water's edge, and whereas the mystic Noah went straight into the water, started swimming, discovering pearls, and he called the learned person to come on in, the water's fine. and the learned person said, I dare not go forward, because he was lost in his reasonings. So I think it's about experience. The same as a baby learns how to walk, learns about the world. We don't need an intellect to learn about love. We can feel it very easily.
Thank you.
Ahmed? I'm in a view that we have to differentiate the concept of belief than other concepts like mathematics, science, physics, because probably you need scholarship and understanding and readings in order to grasp the concepts of physics and mathematics. But the concept of belief is something that comes from the inner being of a person. And as Baha'u'llah says, you have to open your heart to the concept in order to grasp the concept. So I think we have to differentiate the two, the different. When Christ came, the clergy of the Jews persecuted him and ordered his execution. And a fisherman recognized him as the manifestation of God and believed in him, and he became a teacher of the beings, other beings. So I think the concept of belief has a different aspect in it. It's to do with spirit. It's to do with connection between man and God. So I think we have to differentiate these two, this concept with other concepts of physics, math, science, knowledge of creation. One needs understanding of the concept. The other needs the spirit, the belief, the inner being in order to recognize it. So I don't know whether you have the same view or not, but I think there has to be a differentiation of the two.
Yeah, I agree, although I don't see the two processes quite so different. In academia or science, there's the logical and there's the experiential, and you can discover the truth through what you experience and can test. I think this spiritual path is a little bit parallel to that. It just needs a different kind of perception, and that's the purpose of the manifestations of God, to open our perception, to feel love, and to be able to see love in its various forms. I'm talking about compassionate type of love, where we all care for our fellow human beings.
You, yeah, approaching time to close. Gabby, you have been writing so much on the comments. Would you like to say something? Gabby?
Hi, sorry.
Hello, Gabby.
Hi, everyone.
Gabby, Colin's daughter. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, that's my dad, everyone. That's my dad. I feel like, has anyone seen Mean Girls? I feel like the mum in the audience, like filming, really excited. Anyway, Dad, I love you. I just had a random thought that I was typing, but I'll just say it out loud. It's been so interesting realizing God is inverse to the kingdom of earth. For example, when you eat in the flesh, you get full and you don't want to look or smell food again. But eat in the spirit, when you have spiritual food, you just get hungry. And you never want to stop researching and like learning about God and feeling his presence. Yeah, that's just one example. Thank you. I love you.
I think that's a good observation. With food, you get full. With spiritual food, you it never runs out, and you always want. It's always there, and you always want more.
Yes. And thank you, Gabby. It was very nice to see you here and having your comments. I think everyone.
Hi,
Yeah.
Alapa.
Yes, you want to comment, Margaret?
Yes, please. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I want to say that just to comment on what a friend said about how we can help the school system, to be able to educate the children in school. And even the parents has a lot to do, in this transformation. How many of us were trained? The system, the Baha'i principle now, the program the Baha'i is having now for the world. Our parents, in my own African tradition, did not receive this training that we are receiving now. So a parent will now tell a child, don't do this, don't enter this person's house, don't do that, don't do that. Don't talk to this person from this religion. The problem is from us, the parents, because we were not trained. Okay, with the system that the new world order system that Baha'u'llah has brought to mankind, if we investigate, even all these religions that came into the world, people take them to different places and then listen to the teachings and then begin to investigate the teachings. And then from there, they take a decision on which one to follow. If we see ourselves as children from one source, irrespective of our religious background, ethnic, nationality, tribe, even our races, if we remove that from our minds and begin to teach these children that God is one, no matter the names we call them in our different languages, that God gave us these languages. And then for us to be able to understand his teachings as the manifestations of God comes to us, we now have to be able to investigate what God has sent through this manifestation. We listen to them. They are divine teachers from God. They are divine educators from God. And we, because we're educated, we don't just continue to hold on to that old believe, don't do this, don't talk to somebody in another religion, or don't eat from the person from another religion. By the time we changed that, I personally, I worked in a school where we had a Montessori school, and then it was a Baha'i lady from America, himself and the husband, Mr. and Mrs. Garmans, they are Baha'is. And then they introduced the system. The children from different religious backgrounds, they were in that school. And their holidays, and any day they observe their various holidays from different religion, the school system made it possible make provision for everybody to observe and respect each other's religion. So during their Muslim holidays, fine, they gather together and they read, and then everybody joins together. Even the Hindus children, they were in our school. So everything that we need to do, children learn by example. If we begin to inculcate in the life of children, that they are the future of tomorrow in any part of the world. As we are growing and we are aging, we are going, and they will take our position. So the Baha'i, the community building process that the Baha'i faith is, embarking on, goes down to the grassroots. It's organic. To begin to teach these children from the ages of 5, and then teach them how to learn to cooperate, and then we follow them down to their parents. And when we give them any virtue that they learn for the week, we follow them down to parents. And this will go a long way to change our thinking and enable these children to begin to learn to see themselves as spiritual brothers and sisters, irrespective of where we come from. And gradually, this prejudice will now be removed totally.
Thank you.
As we are aging, we are going, the children will take the place tomorrow and work for the betterment of the society that all of us are longing to see, the peace and unity of the world. And then Baha'u'llah has told us that, unless mankind opens their hearts, and see each other as spiritual brothers and sisters, the peace and unity that we are going to churches, we are going to mosques to pray for, it will not come. So that means that eradication of prejudice is the key. And I so much thank our brother Collins, and the topic of today, is something that all of us will have to go back. As we are closing, we have to have, a deeper thoughts on how we can work together to be able to eradicate this prejudice. Fine, our other sister talked about that. We have to be very careful. Even any words of God said we should apply wisdom in dealing with people. Christ came to teach us love of neighbor. Is it possible and is it easy for us to love our neighbor? But when we see as spiritual brothers, ourselves as spiritual brothers and sisters, we make effort to love our neighbors, to work together with our neighbors. We can start the devotional meeting together with our neighbors, irrespective of any religion or religious group they belong to. Just like we have this interfaith discussion, we can do it anywhere. And from there, we bring this topic, we dialogue it out. And then you see that people will have a different, orientation or thinking about God. Because at the end of the day, we'll all go back to God. No matter where you worship from, the name of any religion doesn't really matter. It is the teachings that the good qualities that what God has brought to mankind, if we can, really practice it, it will go a long way to help us to transform our souls, to transform us in our interactions in this part of the world before we even go back to the next world. And our next life, we know that the life of the soul is important.
Okay,
so that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hopefully one day you can give a presentation. You have a lot to share. And I wanted to ask, Sachi, you wanted to say something?
Sorry, Margaret, all you said is wrong. All you said is wrong because the future
Oh, just hold on. Just hold on. Let me listen to Sachi, please.
No, actually,
Go to
I
another
have
planet.
nothing much to add. Okay, I am on mute because background is noisy. That's why. Anyway, very well done. I really enjoyed Colin's speech and the other things. Thank you very much.
We are going to another planet, you see. We're gonna do Sputnik, space flight, teach the children go to the space, get another planet. You know, we're not gonna stay here. So that's how close we're gonna be spiritual. We're gonna reach God as angels, Margaret.
Okay.
You just these people go around the other way. And it's the wrong way.
Sorry, Young, I've got to mute you there because it's 9 o'clock. And
The wrong way, you see. We had to be careful.
Yeah, I have
Don't
to.
go the wrong way.
I have to remind the quotation that I shared. Do you want me to share it again?
While you're looking for that, I'd just like to thank Margaret. I think you described very nicely the education revolution which is happening around the world.
Yes. What is important here is that I reminded at the very beginning, it's come the time that again I had to remind, whether through deeds or words, the merit of your every contribution to social well-being lies first in your resolute commitment to discover the precious point of unity where contrasting perspectives overlap and around which contending peoples can coalesce. So, if you are trying to do something good for the world, society, the first thing that we have to do is to find the precious point of unity among contrasting perspectives. Definitely, any topic that we are going to talk, we will have different opinions. But trying to establish which opinion is right and which opinion is wrong is not the way to build unity. We have to find what is common so that through that we can travel together. So I know, Jung, you have a lot to say, but the time has passed now, 9:05. Definitely in the next meeting, you can briefly say what you have to say. And I also ask you to give a presentation in one of our meetings, because you have a lot of knowledge, you have a lot of researches done. So please, let's close this meeting with this, the lesson that we learned from today's presentation, to have an open-mindedness, independently investigate and learn from others. And whatever other person is saying is true for himself. That is why he is saying. So try to understand why he is saying. So with that, let us close this meeting and thank you all for your participation and Colin for your wonderful presentation. God bless you all.
Thank you very much.
Namaste.